Dear friends, I would like to warmly welcome you to Greece of sun and sea, as I said. And of course, all these pieces of information come from the history of Greece, that, as you know, is what keeps Greece going. The idea of meeting with you today results from the very need to analyze jointly the first symptoms of a disease of the pharmaceutical supply chain that, unless preempted, could have a disastrous effects. So I would like to call your attention for you to have an overall perspective, an overall understanding of what is going on in Greece that most probably will bring about a domino effect in Europe, in the European Union. Since 6 years in Greece, the so-called development strategies have been implemented that, with an excuse, the excuse of a sound development, are bringing about a destruction and unprecedented undermining of our sector. The German model we wanted to apply, that, as far as we know, is very successful in Germany. We have asked so that German model to be reproduced here. We have asked to follow the instructions of the European Union that govern the sector of pharmacies, but we have been said that we could not probably do that, but rather chaos is what we are going to face, because the total lack of organization is what we are experiencing in Greece. The situation is chaotic as regards the opening hours of pharmacists in the name of what they call as a free market, as a result of which patients do not know when a pharmacy is open, what pharmacy is open. On-call shifts have no sense whatsoever, and so pharmacists just lie behind their counter with no profit whatsoever. And then other regulations as to the ownership of pharmacists. Sometimes pharmacies are established without the necessary notification, thus devaluing the pharmaceutical care. There's a general devaluation of the sector of pharmacy that, personally, I believe, and I suppose you believe too, that is a leading figure in the primary health care. The situation is chaotic as regards the premises of pharmacies. The requirements of the Memoranda have allowed the establishment of pharmacies in other outlets when with a size of 5 square meters. That is, pharmacy angles of corners, rather, of 5 square meters that could be hosted in a grocery shop or in a gas station, and required to follow the opening hours of the other outlet, of the other grocery shop or whatever. And then AOP, the only insurance fund in Europe, is paying pharmacists when they wish, whenever they wish. And yesterday, a press release of AOP advised the suppliers that unless the necessary funding, the necessary financing is received, the money coming from the Greek taxpayers for the insurance schemes, AOP will fail to pay the suppliers. So AOP publicly gave a press release asking the government for its financing. But however, this money is lacking, and is lacking because it has been channeled to other providers, to other directions. So instead of covering the needs and the arrears of AOP towards its suppliers, including the pharmacies, right now are are bridging other gaps. And a similar situation, of course, is characterizing the relations between pharmacists and third parties. Well, pharmacists account to citizens. The remaining supply chain does not come into direct contact with citizens. The other stakeholders just ask for their money, no matter if pharmacists have money to pay their suppliers. So actually the whole pressure is exerted upon pharmacists because pharmacists are the ones that contact directly and interact with the public and the citizens. And of course the pharmacists cannot possibly say to the wholesalers that explain and justify their failure to pay. And so there's a lack of understanding, and that is why wholesalers very often put pressure on pharmacists and hold them as hostages. But why all this is happening? Well, look, healthcare and medicine were targeted as factors, as elements, a redundant cost for the government budget. Pharmaceutical expenditure is just a figure that has to shrink. No one is interested in the future of citizens. Some rules have to be implemented for figures to reach the required levels, regardless of the future of the citizens and the health and future of the Greek and the European peoples. The expenditure has to increase both in Greece and abroad. Greece is experiencing a very severe humanitarian crisis. There are insured people in Greece that are unable to pay for their contributions. And we pharmacists are experiencing still another problem, that giving credit to the insured people. We take note of the co-payments of patients that are unable to pay, and sometimes at the end of the month, the patients still tell us they cannot pay, and so the situation goes on and goes on with many patients totally, utterly unable to pay. So there is a humanitarian crisis in Greece. This is well known to everyone. Everyone knows that. Greek people's accessibility to medicine is not a substandard as regards the EU. And another problem that is about to emerge in Europe, because no one in the European Union has been able to understand a very simple thing. I have repeatedly said that the German representative is here, and I have not shared that with him, but I tell that before everyone. Of course, Germany cannot become Greece, Greece cannot become Germany. As regards the geographical morphology, the morphology of Greece, as you have said, you have seen in the video, we have remote areas, we have mountains, we have many islands. Everywhere, dear colleagues, there is a pharmacy in Greece. There are remote islands of 600 inhabitants or 300 inhabitants with a pharmacy. A practitioner may lack, but a pharmacy does not. So always exists. Even if other infrastructures, other healthcare operators and professionals are missing, a pharmacy everywhere exists. And if you just examine the figures, then maybe the number of pharmacies is high. But if you examine in depth the morphology of Greece, then this number is not that high. For example, in remote areas, in mountainous areas, in a village that has no hospital, has no health center, what will a patient do? He or she will just contact the pharmacist. In Greece, you know, the service does not exist. I heard previously Dara saying that there is a emergency contraceptive service, vaccination and screening, blood screening, etc. Well, here in Greece, this costs nothing. All these services are provided for free. And what is more, the prices are in decline. So our earnings are declining, are decreasing as well, and our margin is shrinking. This is our loss. No deadline is given for the previous stock to be delivered, to be dispensed with the previous prices. This just doesn't happen here. Greece, this beautiful country, as you said, has been subject to a political and social crisis. Turnover of pharmacies has declined by 70% over the past 5 years, and at the same time, 70%, I repeat, decrease in turnover and an increase in expenses, overhead expenses of 40%. If you understand that, you will understand the extent to which pharmacies may survive in Greece. Cuts in pharmaceutical expenditure that is achieved through horizontal cross-cutting manner with no financial and economic standards and criteria. No one thinks whether, for example, this medicine will be replaced with another one. Aspirin in Greece is provided in packs of that cost 1.80 euro with 20 pills. And of course, you made reference also to shortages. Yes, of course, we have. We do suffer from shortages. However, 2 months ago, there was an unprecedented crisis in Greece because of the behavior of banks and the capital controls that Greece has suffered. Cyprus, is familiar with the problem. We have become familiar with the problem, and I can assure you that it is tremendous. We can pay absolutely nothing. And at that time, 2 months ago, we pharmacists managed to endure the situation and to contribute to the survival of pharmacy by dispensing, providing patients with medicines, no matter what, and gradually the situation has stabilized. But no one has even acknowledged that contribution to date. The factors that have an impact on European systems have to be mentioned. We have the aging population. We have the increasing migration flows, and I will share with you something in a while, and I will also show you something that will be quite harsh, I have to say. The introduction in healthcare of business interest to the detriment of public health. We should take that into due account. There are financial interests, local financial interests in Greece that are predominant and want to penetrate our market. 70% of the measures implemented are intended to dismantle the dispersed pharmacies network, this optimal distribution of pharmacies all around Greece. And let us not forget also that the factors affecting today's situation and the status of healthcare is the general crisis of values. No one can doubt over the fact that there is a value crisis. Today's meeting, therefore, is taking place on a very important date, a crucial era for our profession, and not only for that, of course. There's a need for a heading to a more decisive, a more crucial role, as the president of PGU said earlier, by community pharmacists and pharmacists that are protected institutionally. I cannot imagine a pharmacist that cannot function independently. My own philosophy is that a pharmacist has to be independent, to operate independently on the basis of his science, because he is the one to manage the medicine. A social good rather than a consumable, a consumer good. It would be very easy, of course, to change everything just by viewing medicine as a good, as a merchandise that should follow the market rules. But it's much more difficult to perceive medicine as a social good. And this is what we have to do and our societies have to do. Dear President of the PGU, it's the first time I make reference to you. As regards services, first of all, I would like to ask you, if feasible, in the meeting that we shall have on the occasion of the General Assembly in November, if I'm not wrong, to write down a list of services from our centralized European body to distribute to the pharmacy associations of our member states, in order to allow the provision of these services to the benefit of pharmacists. I cannot understand why in Greece, for example, a patient may go to the GP in order to have a medicine prescribed and then go to the pharmacy and have his or her vaccination without paying anything. Why should a patient pay €5 the ticket for the NHS hospital and then have his or her blood pressure measured with no cost whatsoever? Well, I'm not sure how this goes in Europe. I'm looking forward to hearing all of you sharing your experiences, but I cannot understand how the Greek government or the state in general, the countries in general, consider some things as self-evident. They give them for granted. In the past, some patients could come to the pharmacist and ask for a vaccination or blood pressure, etc. And in the past, the patient would ask, "What do I owe you?" And then we replied, "Nothing. They were our clients, so we had to do so." But today, people give for granted that the service is provided for free. But the patient does not do so when they pay a visit to the GP, to the practitioner, to the lawyer, etc. Citizens give for granted that the provision of services by pharmacists is for free, and this has to change. And of course, sustainability of pharmacists is an overriding priority. How we will proceed? Well, the key point here, I'm convinced, I firmly believe that we should proceed with our endeavors to convince all day long, every day, our customers, our governments, that we are indispensable, that we are necessary. If our role is devalued through the reforms and measures they are trying to promote and to implement, etc., then we are bound to disappear, to vanish. Who will in the future be interested in the pharmacies if our services are not institutionalized, if our services are not advertised, if there is not awareness raising as to our crucial role? What's the sense in just dispensing a medicine and just giving some instructions as to the way the medicine has to be taken? I mean, this is not a great deal. We have to focus on the other things we can do. Dear President, dear friends, thanks to the support of PGU, we should make our voice heard to all governments in order to make clear the following important elements. First of all, the rational use of medicines contributes to the decrease, the savings on healthcare expenditures, and not the other way round. Let me repeat. The rational use of medicines contributes to savings in the sector of healthcare and not the other way round. Secondly, the accessibility of patients to medicines needs to be universal, and we have to guarantee that accessibility. Thirdly, pharmacies should be operated by an independent pharmacist that will be totally responsible and accountable for its operation. A pharmacist cannot be should be independent in order to be accountable, and who has the capital investor, could not be held liable or accountable, because we have to focus on the general public health. Fourthly, the pharmacist is the only scientific that, when operates in an independent manner, can contribute to the rational management of medicine. Safety goes through our pharmacies. So we have to make clear that pharmacies are the real and only means through which medicines can be dispensed and provided in safety. And another thing, we focus on prevention. Prevention is another thing we could be involved in. I heard by Mr. Smith that in the Netherlands, for example, the other day we were talking with other colleagues as well. You said that in the Netherlands no one can pay a visit to the hospital unless a GP, first of all, examines the patient in order to define and decide whether the patient will go to the hospital, will be hospitalized or not. And of course, hospitalization has an important and significant cost there. Well, here this is not the case. Hospitals are full with sometimes without a real reason. So prevention can pass through pharmacies. Why not? Especially in remote areas where general practitioners may be absent sometimes, may not be available. And by way of conclusion, let me tell you this. We talked about the increase in pharmaceutical expenditure. Why would that be a bad thing? I am in favor of increasing pharmaceutical expenditure. I am in favor, on condition that that pharmaceutical expenditure reduces other expenditures that are even more deleterious. By way of an example, they have abolished several surgeries, stomach surgeries, etc. 15 years ago, that was the most usual surgery, and that produced great suffering for the patients and great expenditure. Today, we see the pharmaceutical expenditure decreased, by the hospital expenditure is being increased. So why increasing pharmaceutical expenditure would be a bad thing, after all? Our responsibility as healthcare professionals is a great responsibility, and we should work together for a better future of healthcare in Europe. On the occasion of the General Assembly in November, I would like to propose the decision-taking that would promote our role in a Europe of equal rights, human rights, welfare state, innovation, democracy, humanity, and solidarity. This is the Europe that we need to build, and this is the Europe that we need to struggle to promote. I'm sure that today's Europe is not that Europe. Today's Europe is not a Europe of solidarity, of equal rights, of equality, democracy, and all the other elements that I said. So the solutions given to the problem cannot be based on party thinking and personal interests. And this goes for all the European countries. Solutions should be found within a social whole, within a society and the civil society, and of course the whole framework. I would like to conclude my presentation by sharing with you a very brief story. It's very important for you to listen to that. But first of all, I would like you to see a picture. It's quite harsh. I have to tell you, I'm shocked already, and I will not see that picture.
Είναι άσχετο.
This is irrelevant with the proceedings of today's meeting. I still cannot see that photo. It's too hard to...
Είναι μια σκηνή απίστευτης.
This is an unbelievably harsh picture, cruel picture. And I put my son in this boy's shoes. Please do the same. please think of the family of this boy as if this family were yours. Kindly think of yourself as a wishing to save your family, rescue your family, and with that objective, just carry your family on a boat, on an inflatable boat, and you manage to rescue your family, and you avoid this kind of ending of the story. And you reach a country where utter chaos prevails. And this is what we shared with the President of the Republic yesterday during our meeting. We had a meeting yesterday with the President of the Republic, together with the Vice President, the General Secretary of the PGU, and the Director of Legal Affairs, as well as the President, Vice President, and General Secretary of the Pan-Hellenic Pharmacists Association. And that's exactly what we said, that initiatives have to be taken by all governments of the European Union. Everyone has to understand that Greece is a gateway, is a gate of entrance for all the sufferings that could reach Europe. Of course, I have no problems with the Central European countries. I am in favor of a united Europe, of course, but everyone has to understand that the migration crisis is not a Greek crisis. It's not a Greek problem. Right now, along the shores of Turkey, 3.5 million refugees are ready to enter Greece. So you should know that in Mytilene, Kos, Chios, in many remote islands along the border of Greece, people, these islands are crowded, and we are talking about a number of people that double the local communities. And of course, these people just want to transit through Greece in order to reach the Central European countries and Northern European countries. But Greece cannot be used like that. The European governments have to understand that and to stop viewing Greece as just these children wanted to grow up like your children, my son. I would like to put forward today this proposal to vote a shared resolution and keep communicating one with the other in order to examine the possibility of taking other measures. I wish that you will accept this proposal of mine at the end of the proceedings of today. A resolution could be voted by all of us. And the story I said earlier. Well, this is a donkey. One day, a farmer's donkey fell into a well. You can even read the story there. The well's owner felt it was not right to take that donkey out because the animal was too old and the cost required to pull it out was significant. And that is why the farmer asked all the other co-citizens to bury it alive, as a result of which the donkey started to scream since the very beginning. And at a certain point, the donkey just ceased to scream, to cry. And then the farmers thought that he had died. But then the donkey just . got to the surface. So what did he do? He actually used the dirt in order to stand up and reach the surface. So the lesson we can learn is that the problems that we have to cope with could be duly used in order to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay? So we should not be overwhelmed by problems. We should use the problems in an intelligent way in order to get aloof. I apologize for my having been moved earlier, but of course I am shocked. I suppose you are shocked as well. And I would like to give the floor to Mr. Makriyanis for the next session. Thank you.